they'd always say, Dad could make a deal on a handshake, and people would trust that. His word was his bond.
Jerry Mack made a lot of deals.
You can look in any direction. I can show you the Jerry Mack development in real estate. You can look at 360 degrees, and I'll show you one project after another.
From UNLV to the McCarran Center, Jerry Mack left quite a legacy in Las Vegas.
He always knew that Las Vegas had great promise.
Jerome D. Mack was born November 6, 1920, in Michigan, the only son of Nate and Jenny Mack. The family moved to Southern Nevada in the early 30s.
My father-in-law decided to move to Boulder City, and that's where my husband was raised. He went to grammar school there, and when it was time for high school, then he went to Las Vegas High School. So he's a real Nevadan.
UCLA was Mack's next stop, and that's where he met his future bride, Joyce.
Well, he was my older brother's good friend, fraternity brother, and he'd bring him home. I lived in Westwood at that time, and he'd bring him home. That's how I met him. That was when I was just a kid. I was like 15, 14. Well, I told him I was 16, but I really wasn't.
After the war, the two were married in 1947. They made what they thought would be a temporary move to Las Vegas.
I came here with him because his dad said he's got some property to develop, and my husband was thinking about developing property in Los Angeles. And his dad said, well, we've got a lot of stuff up here. Why don't you come and develop it up here? And so he asked me if I would want to move up here for a while, for a year or two. So I had a 3-month-old baby and a 2-year-old baby. And I thought, well, that sounds like an adventure. I thought it was a great idea. I liked it.
Joyce never expected they'd spend the rest of their lives in the Southern Nevada desert.
I made him promise me at one point, now remember, I want my kids to go to Beverly Hills High School. That was the spot for them. Never happened.
And lucky for Las Vegas, it didn't. In 1954, Jerry Mack helped found the Bank of Las Vegas. Around the same time, his father, Nate Mack, introduced him to a young man about his age named Harry Thomas.
One day he came in, he said, I've been thinking. He said, I've been watching you operate this bank, and I like what you're doing. And he said, I would like you and my son to become partners. And I'll never forget it. I said, well, Nate, I don't have the resources to invest in real estate like you would with your son. He said, time will take care of everything. So about 1 week later, he called Jerry and me together. He said, you fellows just bought 80 acres on San Francisco Street from Paradise to Maryland Parkway.
San Francisco Street eventually became Sahara. It was the start of a lucrative business partnership and close friendship for years to come.
It was a very easy relationship between the two of us. We got along as friends very well, and then when we became partners, it worked out very well.
They were closer than any brothers that you would ever see. And Terry was always the banking guy. My husband was more of the real estate part. And they got along so beautifully. It's unbelievable.
The bank grew, and the dynamic duo continued to snap up parcels of land for development at a time when few realized its value. In 1969, the Bank of Las Vegas merged with the Valley Bank of Reno to form Valley Bank. Years later, it would become Bank of America. But Thomas says Jerry Mack's legacy reaches far beyond the bank. It was his concern for this community's future that is perhaps his most important contribution.
And I'll never forget it. We were in my office, and Jerry and I were looking at all that. And I said, you see what I see? And he said, I sure do. And what we both saw was the University of Nevada only had 55 acres. And at that point, we were startled. What it really meant to both of us is we looked at each other and said, boy, we've got to do something about this. We're going to have a bunch of dumb kids around here. And we both knew that nobody uses land more than the university, with the exception of the U.S. Army. I mean, university, you need lots and lots of land. So we decided right then and there that we'd contact the university and form the UNLV Land Foundation and fund it and go out and buy all the land we could in the area.
With that, the UNLV Land Foundation was born. Thomas and Mack helped add 400 acres to the campus, and they funded the well-known basketball center, which was appropriately named in their honor.
In our opinion, anyway, The university is the heart and soul of any community. That's where the heart beats. You've got to have a strong university.
First thing he wouldn't ask somebody, but he'd want to know, well, what college do they go to? Did they graduate? You know, and this was very top. Education and intelligence, that was very important to him.
To this day, the Mack family continues to contribute to UNLV. In 2001, Joyce Mack and the Thomas family made a joint contribution to establish the Thomas and Mack Legal Clinic at the law school. In October of 2005, the two again announced a $3 million commitment to establish the Thomas and Mack Moot Court Complex, also at the Boyd School of Law. But education wasn't Jerry Mack's only priority. He was active in the Jewish community as well, starting a school at Temple Beth Shalom in his father's name and serving in several leadership roles in local temples. He and Perry continued to leave their mark on Las Vegas. With the purchase of the Crockett Ranch in 1991, Jerry Mack developed a 100-acre master-planned office park, which would become McCarran Center.
Well, there was never a dull day. We had a few explosions here and there, but the days were long and they were challenging.
In September of 1998, after a long battle with cancer, Jerry Mack died. He left behind a wife of over 50 years who remembers their time together fondly.
We had a very, very good time. Well, often some people say they want to come back as Jerry Mack because they knew that, you know, he had a good time here and business was good. And we had a great time in Newport and Catalina in our boat.
He left behind 3 daughters who admire him greatly.
Oh, he was a wonderful man. I am so lucky to have had him as a dad.
And he left behind a best friend who was more like a brother.
I miss Jerry. I really miss him. Every day I miss him. He was a wonderful guy just to be with all the time.
Perry Thomas can only recall one argument in many years of friendship.
The only thing we ever argued about, Jerry would get concerned because I tipped too much.
And now, fittingly, Jerry Mack is honored as part of a select group of Nevada's most respected business leaders, a member of the Nevada Business Hall of Fame.
Well, I think he'd like that. I think he'd like that a lot. That's quite an honor. And so he would feel that was pretty good. He'd like that.
He certainly was a cornerstone in this community and the development of this community.
A community that grew only because of Jerry Mack's ability to see what it needed for a successful future.